In this video, we're going to look at how you could use Forms Pro to have somebody sign up for a newsletter or to get some kind of subscription-based thing and go ahead and sign up for it via a Forms Pro survey and actually end up into ConvertKit. Now, if you haven't used ConvertKit or heard of it, it's similar to MailChimp. It's basically an email marketing tool, but it's got so much more to it where you can have automations. There's a lot more that's going on with ConvertKit. So if you haven't had a look at it before, check it out. There's going to be a link in the video description below. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to have a Forms Pro survey, and we've got a question that is basically a choice question, and I've got two choices. Instead of just yes, no, I've got yes, please, not today, thanks. And that's in response to the question, would you like to sign up for my newsletter? Now, I typically add a question like this into any presentation that I do. A lot of people come up afterwards and ask for information, and to me that's just an easy, simple way for someone to either say yes, I want to get content, or no, I don't, and that's fine either way. So there's my question that I've got on the survey. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is if I go ahead to Power Automate, I can look at a flow that I have. And what I need to do is, I'm not going to go through the whole flow, but the flow is basically the trigger of when a new survey response is received. We need to have the step that says get the survey response details. And with that, we're setting and saying, well, which form is it? And then we're using an integer, or we're basically using an expression to turn the response ID into an integer. That then allows us to get all of the responses. So my condition is the newsletter requested? So we have the question of, would you like to get my newsletter? And we're able to pull that because we have this step here where we're actually getting those survey responses. So once we've pulled it, we're saying, is it equal to, and then yes, please, or whatever it is that you've put into that question as the choice for yes. Then all I'm doing is I'm basically getting the related contact record in my common data service environment. I'm using the regarding value as the record identifier. And then all I need to do is I need to have a corresponding question in my common data service environment or SharePoint or whatever it is that you're using. And if I scroll down, I've got newsletter as my question, and it's a Boolean, so it's a yes, no, and I'm just going ahead and setting it as yes. Because what you'll find is you'll need to do that condition check, because you can't just take the question and populate it into that. Because it's a Boolean, you're not able to do it in that fashion. So we have to say, did they answer yes to this? If they did, let's go ahead and actually set this to yes. Okay, so those are the two things that are related to Microsoft products. So the Forms Pro and then your Power Automate and setting up your flow. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at a tool called Zapier, or Zapier, however you say it. And what we're doing here is I wanted a way to be able to have somebody say yes to my newsletter and then actually end up putting them in as a subscriber in this ConvertKit tool or service that I use. So with this, we're basically saying we've got a connection. It's very similar to Power Automate, but we basically have a way in which we can connect to Dynamics 365. So with this, we are using that connection. If you're using anything else, you might want to search. I'm not sure if there's anything for SharePoint or other connectors, but this is the one that I'm going to be talking through. So the first thing that we do is we basically say, all right, well, we want Microsoft Dynamics 365, and the trigger we want is when a contact is updated. We can also have it to where if it's a new contact, you might want to have a couple of zaps or processes that you create for that. Then what we're doing is we're just choosing the account, and that's basically you logging into your Dynamics environment. And then what we're doing is it will give you some samples of data just so that you can review it and do some testing. So if I open up contact A, I can see there we've got Walker, we've got Megan, and if I scroll down to my newsletter field, I can see that the response was true. So this gives us samples of data that was actually filled out. So we've got our sample. Then what we need to do is we need to add some kind of filter. So we're using a Zapier filter. So we can see here. And then the filter is basically saying only continue if that field of MVW newsletter, if the Boolean is set to true. So if it's not, it's going to basically end the process. So again, very, very similar to Power Automate. So if that field is equal to true, then we'll continue. And the last thing is we'll connect to the ConvertKit connector. And again, we're basically going through and we are choosing an action and we're adding a subscriber to a form. It'll basically say what account, so you'll be logging in, and then we are taking the values from the Dynamics 365 customer engagement contact record. So we can see there we're pulling in the email address, we're pulling in the first name, we're pulling in the last name. And we are also opting in to a sequence. And I will show you this in just a moment. So I'm adding them to either the pop-up form. I've also got another form that is for newsletter sign-up. So I've got different things. So I can basically say, add them to a form. So it's almost as if that person has gone to the website and filled out that form. That's essentially what we're replicating. And then this allows us to do a test and basically send a test and make sure that it would have worked. Now be careful if you are using this and you do your test, because if your test is then going to end up sending out an email to somebody, then that will still do that. So make sure that the test data you're using is your own email address, or it's not going to actually trigger any kind of communication back out to them. Now, so I picked that I wanted to subscribe someone to a form. And what I have in ConvertKit is I have an automation, and again, this is also quite similar to Power Automate in terms of you've got some kind of flow, some kind of workflow with steps. So it starts when somebody either completes or is added to either the pop-up form or the newsletter subscription page form. Then what we're doing is we're basically saying, do they have the newsletter tags, or depending on where they came from. If they don't, then let's go ahead and add the newsletter tag to them. If yes, we can just ignore that step. And then basically what we're doing is we're sending out a welcome email. So that is letting somebody know, hey, you've been subscribed, or thanks for subscribing and requesting my newsletter. So again, this was because I wanted a way in which I could have somebody at an event come to a presentation, say they wanted my newsletter, and all of that was done automatically behind the scenes. I didn't want to have to go and do that for them, or then direct them and say, go to this page, blah, blah, blah. So a little bit different. It's still linked to Forms Pro, but this will show you how you can kind of automate that process. I would suggest looking at ConvertKit. It's a really fantastic tool. There's so much you can do with it. And also Zapier as well, if that's something that you are interested in. There are additional connectors that do not currently exist with Microsoft Power Automate, so it's certainly something that I use in conjunction with Power Automate, and if I can't do it in one, typically I could do it in the other. So hope that's of interest to some of you, and let me know in the comments below.
Hi, I'm Megan Walker. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and that you learned something from it. If you don't want to miss out on any other content, you can go ahead and click on my face below to subscribe. And if you want to watch the next video, you can do that by clicking over here and go ahead and get started. Thanks again.